Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Like I've been telling you, we've got a lot going on today's program, and really excited about our next segment. I think it's going to be very helpful for people, and I think really some important food for thought. It brings a lot of elements that I've been very interested in. I've been very interested in the country of Chile. People look at Latin America and they think of it as all developing. The reality is that Chile is actually one of the most advanced countries in the world. And a great example of that is a very vibrant free market economy, technologically advanced thanks to those free markets. And when they got hit by an earthquake that would have flattened a lot of other countries, it responded and rebounded incredibly. And it's just a phenomenal story. And I'm so glad we get to share it today. An excellent book out there. I just recently got it, so I haven't had a chance to finish it. But it's called Leadership Dispatches: Chile's Extraordinary Comeback from Disaster, and written by several authors, including Michael Useem, whom I'm visiting with today. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Good to be talking with you.
Yeah, I'm love the idea. I love the book. I love the fact that you're kind of giving props to what I think is a largely misunderstood country. I think most people in the United States collectively look at Latin America as poor. There's this broad brush. And the reality is that, and according to Wall Street Journal and the Heritage Foundation, it even ranks about as high, or I think now higher than the United States in the economic freedom, and it's been that way now for quite some time. And it really has paid off in terms of creating a very vibrant business culture and a vibrant business infrastructure, don't you think?
I do. And, as a case in point, a president came into Chile back in 2010, just a few days after an absolutely huge, massive earthquake that hit the country. And he brought in a business background himself, put together a cabinet that had lots of people who would run enterprise. And when this disaster struck, with some 400 to 500 times more powerful than the earthquake that had hit Haiti just a few weeks before, that led to the death of over 250,000 people. In Chile, when this bigger earthquake hit, the president with a business background and really a leadership capacity, maybe to make that more general, and a cabinet that was ready to act as well, they jumped in to rescue, and they revitalized the country, brought it back, and Chile today is certainly far more ready for the next one, having gotten through the last one.
Yeah, and by the way, I was so excited about the topic, I jumped right straight into it. You're a professor of management at the Wharton School, and glad to have you on the program and have your background. By the way, what was the death toll for their earthquake, for the Chile earthquake?
The death toll was 531 people total. And the earthquake on this famous magnitude scale that we often cite, knowing that the earthquake that just hit Chile was 7.8, the one that hit Haiti back in 2010 was 7.0, Chile was an 8.8, about 20 times greater than the earthquake in Nepal that's probably killed, it's estimated now, probably more than 10,000 people perished. So that was a sign of how massive that earthquake was, but Chile already well-developed, had in place a number of measures to protect buildings from collapse and the like, and of course that made a huge difference. Yeah,
absolutely. And in fact, I think it's ranked in the top 10 earthquakes of all time in terms of magnitude.
Yeah, it's number huge. 6.
Number 6. Yeah, and so you're talking about a monster. And, there's an old saying in business that prior preparation prevents poor performance. Well, that certainly was the case with Chile versus Haiti.
It was, and if you put it in numeric terms relative to the GDP, the gross domestic product of these countries, the impact of the Katrina hurricane came to about 1% of America's GDP. The killer earthquake in Japan that led to that nuclear meltdown and the gigantic tsunami, that had an impact of about 6% in terms of economic damage, 6% of the GDP in Japan. Chile's earthquake was equivalent of 18% of the GDP, which is a way of saying that the national leadership had a daunting task But by the way, joining the national leadership, which was very strong, very determined, non-government organizations, volunteers, international agencies, even international companies got into the fray, and together they all aggressively made the difference. And what we're hoping to see the same thing, by the way, in Nepal, in the wake of that catastrophe that happened a couple weeks ago.
And that's a great segue. By the way, our sister news site, usdailyreview.com, has an article right now from Nepal Quake Lessons for the U.S., which was written by our guest today, and delighted that we have it. And make sure you check it out over there at usdailyreview.com. What are some lessons?
Well, there are two big lessons that come from Chile, and we've looked at other disasters too. They're pretty obvious when I say them, but it's such a reminder of how important they are. Number one, you've got to have great make-it-happen leadership in place. That is, people who know how to make a difference. They can move resources, set a vision, and really insist that people get the job done. And that's what the president and the cabinet in Chile brought to that setting. Equally important, and you've really got to have both in our view, is what might be called the rule of law. And that is,
yes.
For example, building codes not only need to be there, but they need to be enforced. And that was part of Chile's recovery story. It did have a very tough building code that goes back to prior earthquakes. And now the rule of law comes in as well. They actually were enforced. So call it rule of law and great national leadership. And then also, by the way, just to say it again too, leadership from everybody in the community, from foundations, community groups, all that proved vital. But anyway, leadership and rule of law together, it's a potent combination.
A serious 1-2 punch, no question about it. And I want people to check out the book. I'm really glad you showcased that book. I wish more people would talk about it. The way Chile became the way it is today, certainly it's somewhat unseemly. It probably would not have happened if it weren't for Pinochet. I'm sure you agree with that. It took a dictatorship to have that kind of autocratic action, to take the kind of really draconian steps they took in the 1970s that led to one of the most free countries today. It's kind of interesting, don't you think?
Well, it's a little bit ironic even, because Chile today, and you said this at the outset, is one of the leading economies in certainly Latin America. It's in what's called the OECD, which is a club based in Paris of the world's most vibrant economies. It and Mexico have joined. And with a rule of law that was restored with the return of democracy, and then a very aggressive private enterprise-driven economic growth system there, all those elements combined helped Chile come back in ways that few countries have. And just by one example, again, back to this 18% in the GDP, that was the cost of that particular earthquake in Chile. Within a year, Chile was back on its 6% annual growth rate. The big international agencies like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund were saying Chile's comeback is truly startling. And the big credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Fitch, for example, never downgraded Chile's sovereign debt.
Yeah.
All that is a way of saying that the government had built respect in the international kind of economic system such that they could borrow, did borrow, and successfully made that also part of the formula for comeback.
Yeah, I actually think they have a higher credit rating than the United States.
They're doing pretty well.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're doing very well. Well, I appreciate you telling your story and telling that stories. And again, to learn more about the book, I think it'd be easiest just to go to usdailyreview.com. It's one of the featured articles there right now. And I put a link in there to his book, which was published by Stanford University. And again, the title of your book.
Leadership Dispatches, Chile's Extraordinary Comeback from Disaster.
Michael Useem, great interview. Thanks for being with us. All right, when we come back,
talk.
much more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here can be found over there at usdailyreview.com. I warned you, this is going to be an information-packed show, and it certainly has been. Stay tuned for more after this.